Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 15th meeting of the Planning Commission. We'll wait for the slide to get up and then we'll get started. Yeah, because I was going to say your clock wasn't quite.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
There
I
we
was
go.
looking at that, I was like, what is the time?
All right. All right, so we're calling to order our regular meeting. Could I please have commissioners do roll call?
Aaron Slade.
Red Harbison.
Lisa Christie, Chelsea Wendell.
Okay, and I am your chairperson for this evening, Christine Crawford. All right, commissioners, if we could please have, are there any changes or edits to the minutes from our last meeting? And if not, could we please get a motion to accept?
Motion to accept, approve.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. All right, Mr. Paradise, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
Okay. That being said, what we have first is a subdivision preliminary plat from Woodstone at Bergen Place, phases 2, 4, and 5, and we have a recusal for one of our commissioners, and that is on file with the city as well. All right. That being said, Tommy, what would you like for us to know about this application?
All right, Madam Chairman, this is an extension of Woodstone Development. It is 32 townhouses and 43 single-family detached lots on 29.10 acres. It's off of Oak Brook Drive, Line Bars Drive, and Rippling Creek. You can see, you also have a waiver request to the required 20-foot minimum setback for lots 23 through 25. The request is for the minimum front setback to be 15 feet. If you notice on here, the shaded portion, that is wetlands. And then you have the buffer around the wetlands denoted by that line. So you can see the buildable portion for those 3 lots, when you add the 30-foot buffer there, really diminishes the building area. And that's the request of the waiver. The developer is, my understanding, has submitted an updated delineation, but staff is currently reviewing that. And of course, however that plays out, will be the final mark of where those wetlands are. And this is where it's at. You see phase 2 on the upper left, phase 4, and then on the other side of the greenway is phase 5. And then give you another look. And this gives you an idea better as well. And these roads all connect to existing roads that I named. So while they dead end and cul-de-sac now, these won't. They'll connect to the cul-de-sacs where the other ones previously dead ended. This gives you another idea. Here's give you an idea of the street trees, landscaping, and the townhouse concepts. This is what they're proposing on the townhouses. So there's phase 2's 25 single-family lots at 11.63 acres. Phase 4 is 18 single-family lots at 9.84 acres, and phase 5 is 32 townhomes on 7.63 acres. The Planning Commission is recommending approval of the preliminary plat or the major subdivision, and With the approval, includes certification of the use of the road name Stillwater Court. That the approval includes a minor waiver from the front setback requirements of Woodstone Bergen Place PD to allow a minimum front setback of 15 feet for lots 23, 24, and 25 in Section 2 only. And also that any outstanding comments be addressed to the satisfaction of city staff. And there's a few minor things out there that's normal, but it was ripe to come before y'all. Any questions?
I have a quick one. You mentioned that there may be an update to the drawing, I guess with regards to where the wetlands are. Is 15 feet, is that sufficient and adequate?
Yes,
given
ma'am.
that- Okay.
We're looking at, actually, we're looking at it that we're anticipating it to go the other way.
Oh,
to the
okay,
builder's benefit.
not make it smaller to make it, okay. Okay, all right.
The updated wetland delineation is getting it away from the desire, or what we need for the lots to be buildable.
Yeah,
Is there,
and the engineer's here, he can answer that, but I believe we're anticipating it to give more buildable area on the lot, but still would need the waiver.
still require a waiver even? with
Yes,
this, so
make
it's
it-
not picking up that much?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was trying to clarify.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Paradise? All right, so if we could, as the applicant comes forward, I'll go over the procedures. So we'd like the applicant to come forward, please give your name and address. We will ask you any questions that we may have immediately, then we'll open it up for public comment and questions. We will ask all members of the public to do their same, give their name and address, return, and then at the end of that public commenting period, we'll ask you to reply to all said comments, and then we will discuss and proceed with the vote. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Philip Green, 1233 Augusta West Parkway. I'm the engineer of record on this project. Just a couple of notes. I know the wetlands have already been discussed. And when this original, that's the original PUD layout that was done for this property. At the time, the wetlands buffer was only required to be 10 feet. Of course, things have changed, and that buffer is now 30 feet. And we've actually done what we could within the city guidelines for horizontal alignment of streets to move the road a little bit further away. But there's only so much we could do with that short distance where we have to tie into the existing end of road there. So with that 30-foot wetlands buffer, we now feel like we need just a little bit more room to actually put a house on those lots. So that's sort of the difference between the original PD plan and where we are today. Other than that, I think we're falling within reason in compliance with the original PD plan as far as the townhome section, the number of lots, and everything else. And the only other thing I wanted to sort of mention was, with that up on the screen, is in lieu of the street trees, in talking with staff and the developer, we're going to go with the subdivision trees and plant those trees in the front yards of each house, which again would be certified before they get a CO. Yeah, that's, other than that, it's sort of the completion of the Woodstone subdivision. As Mr. Paradise mentioned, we're sort of tying dead-end roads together. Everything will then have the access to the greenway. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, commissioners, do you all have any questions for Mr. Green?
I guess there was a connectivity to an adjacent lot originally there in the townhome subdivision in Phase 5. That road was continuing on, and I guess those plans now it's cul-de-sacing into the townhome. I wanted to make sure that wasn't gonna be an issue with the PD, with losing that connectivity. I know engineering will look at the it looked like a regular lot. It didn't look like it was,
Excuse me, I don't think we've got anything back there, so it doesn't
okay.
give me a problem.
And grade-wise, it's it would be a very difficult connection to make on that adjacent property.
Any other questions for the applicant? There being none, Mr. Green, we're gonna open it up and then may call you right back. 'Cause I
Thank you,
don't-
ma'am.
All right, at this time, we'd like to open it up for public comment and questions. If there are any questions, please come forward. Again, say your name and address. All right. There being none, Mr. Green, I think you are fine for a moment. All right, commissioners, we have any discussion, questions, thoughts, motion?
One more question. Can you go back to the phase 2 slide where the street trees were shown? Like, we're gonna do subdivision trees in lieu of that. Where that lot is, that's unbuildable with the wetlands, is there a requirement for trees along that where it would? I don't have a lot number on that, but I guess next to 23, in between 22 and 23, where there wouldn't be any trees required. But if the street tree was going right there, it would be required, but in subdivision trees, obviously that's not a lot. That's not a tree requirement there, would there would be?
Oh, I don't believe so.
Okay, that was more for my clarification on how that would be looked at.
Oh, okay, I see, because it's not a.
Yeah, because we'll have trees in all the subdivisions, but we lose them there because it's unintended consequence.
All right. Any other questions? All right, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of the major subdivision preliminary plat with the conditions of the use of the road name Stillwater Court, including the minor waiver on the front setback requirements to 15-foot front setback for lots 23, 24, and 25 in section 2 only, and that all outstanding comments will be addressed to the satisfaction of city staff.
All right.
Second.
All right, it has been moved and seconded. Any other comments? There being none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, thank you. All right. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Slade will rejoin us now for our tree preservation discussion.
Well, now we're back to quasi work session, study
Yes.
session. And the memorandum I sent to you, recommendation 1 did not change. Recommendation number 2, I changed some of the, to a 25-foot natural buffer along the common development adjacent to streets, and a 15-foot undisturbed buffer between existing subdivisions. There is something in the development code that if you're doing 2, you can share a buffer. There's a section in there on buffers that allows you to split the buffer. And I think that's what y'all wanted on that, but I'm not sure. You know, are y'all good with 1, and are y'all ready to move with the 2? And
So in reading this, I know we kind of had some differing opinions when we talked about it before. I think personally, I love the idea of a buffer on a frontage road, in front of a neighborhood, because I know it had berms or buffering or however we want to landscape. I don't know if 25 feet is too much, because let's say those are 2 3-0 doors. That's 6 foot worth of door. So if we do 25 feet on a front buffer, just visually, are we taking too much away from a builder developer for lot? Is 15 feet better for frontage versus 25 feet? I'm just throwing this out. And then, I don't know, I like the idea of a buffer all the way around a neighborhood, and I don't know if 15 feet's too much, but I know you guys said you got input from other folks, so I don't know where that came from.
well, we kind of copied Columbia County, but just, this is the old field measurement. Okay? If you go from that corner there, where the suspended ceiling starts, each one of those tiles is 2 feet. So it would go over to that second bin. That would be the width of 25 feet. That helps you any visually.
Is that measurement from the trunk of the tree or the the projected canopy of the tree?
The measurements from the property line to the edge of the buffer,
Fabulous.
not trees.
Not the,
Correct.
Okay, and so then you talked about, if there are adjacent subdivisions, would they split the buffer? I guess that was the,
If they're being developed at the same time, that's the tricky part. You know, if you've got a existing subdivision there, well, they don't have a buffer.
right,
If it's open woods there at the time, you may not need a buffer at that time. And then when the next guy comes in, he'll have to do all the buffer. It's very seldom do you have two backing up that's putting them in at the same
so
time.
for instance, like Forest Bluff, not to knock
Yep.
them, but you know, when they cleared behind Cascade, they cleared right up to those people's property line. There would have had to been a buffer there. They would have had to left a buffer. Cause it was
Correct.
woods back there, so just trying to give like an example, like a real world.
Correct, and it would be, as it's written now, and, you know, whatever width y'all want. Right now, it's drafted at 15 feet.
And your point being, if they were developing two neighborhoods at once, they would each take responsibility for 7.5 feet of that.
You could split that if that were to occur, but
that's not
it's
likely.
not often.
Okay.
I'll just say I like 25 and 15, but I could be persuaded.
I like y'all staring at the ceiling now.
I know visually, I mean, that's the thing, is like visually deciding what, yeah.
It's 25 feet from the ceiling, on the ceiling does not look bad.
Well, I mean, if you live in an established neighborhood and they start clearing behind your house and you've lived there forever, I get why people wouldn't want a builder to clear every tree up to their property line. So you just try to think, like, visualize, like, how much would they have to leave? You know?
Well,
Basically,
Because 15 feet might only be essentially like one row of trees, maybe two, depending on the size of the tree. Trying to think of like real world examples.
Now, what this does do, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, is you won't have lots backing up to each other either. And that could be good or that could be bad, depending on the neighbors.
Could they not always come to you and request a waiver from us for certain situations where that made sense?
Anything in the development code they can ask a variance from, that wouldn't come to y'all, that would come to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, I'm all for the tree. I just don't know if we want to make it too dense, because Columbia County, the 25 feet, if y'all go out there and like pay attention to the 25 feet on the frontage, it's pretty thick woods. I mean, so I like that, but are we taking too much away from the builders and the lots? But that's just my.
Yeah, because it is and I understand, because it is the 25, and then you got setbacks, and then you got, right, so you layer all of that on, you're talking about a good chunk of property that they can't put the house on.
And if the
Right,
goal is
so-
to have a noise barrier, not clear cut everything, keep some greenery, I think we accomplish that, but do we want to take too much away too, so, or not take too much away?
Does expert. So do you think that there would be do you think that 15 feet would accomplish that, given our setbacks and everything else, or do you think?
I mean, it's really site dependent on what's there and what kind of tree canopy is existing in that buffer. I mean, you could have a 25-foot buffer that doesn't have anything.
Yeah.
You could have a 15-foot buffer that's full of evergreen trees that you can't, that is a, I mean, there's pine, I mean, so it's really site specific. I mean, protecting, I would say the 25 feet and let waivers come in as needed. I like the way Columbia County looks when you ride through it. They don't.
If I could add,
Charleston's and the other subdivisions that are being built with large buffers up front, it's a good look.
just, you know, and I follow what you're saying, it could be just grass out there in that 25-foot buffer.
Yep.
But there is, were deemed necessary by the planning director, additional measures may be required to provide an effective screen. So that gives the planning director the ability to require planting in that buffer if it's not already there.
That makes me feel better about going to 15.
I definitely like the thicker
We could split the
around
difference
edge.
at 20. I
Yes.
mean, that's not.
Yeah,
Mhm.
split the difference at 20. I said
Yeah.
that to Chelsea. But I do like the wider buffer, like on the exterior of the subdivision. It's more the backing up that I do like is more reasonable.
So I think we're comfortable with 20. 20 for all? Yeah, we split the difference. All right, so our recommendation would be that it be 20 instead of 25. And are there any other changes for?
So is that 20 all the way around or 20 and 15?
I could do 20 and 15.
20 and 15,
15
rather.
on the
I'm
side,
sorry,
okay.
20 and
15 in
15.
the
So the
back.
25 to 20. Yeah, that's what I was.
Like 10, but that's
10
just
on, the, 10 on the sides and back would be fine. As long as we got that same language in there supplement.
Okay, so is there interest in the 15 being changed to 10 with the same language on plantings and? No, not in.
in the minority.
Okay, come on. Well, no, that doesn't mean it will remain the minority. So, you have a strong preference for 10? On the,
Again, I like the idea of the buffer. I'm just, just not taking so much away from a buildable site. It's because that's 5 more feet. And if it's just the in-between, I just don't know that we need 15 feet versus 10. But that's, again, I get both sides.
Yeah, and they can offer
yeah, but a variance requires a
A
certain.
hardship.
Yeah, a hardship. It's not just a,
I can't, I do that.
yeah, it's just, I'd like it to be bigger. Like, that's not,
Right.
that's not,
Right.
I wish it were bigger. That's not what that is. And I think that would, like the one we just had, so there may be some hardship cases with wetlands, other reasons why. Then those would fall in, but otherwise, then this 15 would be from henceforth. Would be a requirement.
And just kind of thinking out loud here too, is most likely this property would be deeded to the HOA. They would have to maintain it. So if you do have deadfall or if you have something, again, keep the buffer, have that there, but if we can eliminate a little less square footage of land for them to maintain that, because there will be a maintenance aspect for sure for some of these neighborhoods. So, visually 15 feet is great, but if you can cut 5 feet off, that's 5 less feet they have to maintain. And I'm just kind of thinking of long term. We want it to look good. We want the neighbors to be happy, the residents, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with that too. It's just a little less to maintain.
Just because you made me think of it, and I don't know if there is. So if there is not an HOA, then whose responsibility?
If this is all new, I would assume every neighborhood's going to have an HOA.
But not every
Yeah.
neighborhood. There's some neighborhoods who getting away. It's just a,
But then if you have a buffer, then whoever owns the land then would be responsible for it. So they would have to build to the code.
yeah. Okay.
And just thinking through the hurricane that's happened, and I think we all had neighborhoods, like our neighborhood had HOA property that had issues, and, it's who's fixing this, who's doing that, and it was just, and hopefully, we'll never
Right.
have that again, but kind of brought some of those things to the forefront of common area and green space.
And I'll say, I'm probably also okay with 10, so I get the planning perspective, but I also, you know that when you buy a piece of property in your lot, that your line goes up to a certain place, because I have gotten cold into forgetting where my line is because nobody has built, doesn't mean that I didn't know that when I bought it, right?
Right.
So so some of what we talk about is also just because people have gotten comfortable and forgotten where their property line is. Yeah, so from that standpoint, I also think I'm probably okay with 10 feet being sufficient, but that's,
I can be fine with 10, if that's the consensus.
all right. So 25 goes to 20 and 15 goes to 10. Does that work for you, Tommy?
Whatever you say, boss.
Okay.
I'm with you.
Okay.
Okay, and then, the last
Call
one
this
we
one
added,
Rhett's Law.
excuse me?
I said, we're gonna call recommendation 3 Rhett's Law.
And for lack of a better, Mr. Harbison sent me a copy of Georgetown counties this afternoon. I was trying to keep it simple, and basically, the definition of a grand tree, and we were using 24 inches DBH or greater of anything other than a pine. That may be too large. You may want it smaller. To be honest with you, I was just picking a number to start the conversation there. And then the other things that we did, or I was recommending or drafting, was amending section 7.3.3 that all landscape plans shall show existing grand trees, any grand tree proposed to be removed. I was trying to, in full disclosure, looking at the costs to the developers and affordability on housing, and trying to keep from a full-blown survey, or tree survey. So if you all want that, I'll be glad to put it in there. But whenever y'all were talking, I had gotten the impression that was one of y'all's issues as well. I wanted to go there. And then 7.3.2 amended to add 0.7, and this would prohibit a grand tree removal except for these 6 conditions. It would cover both developed property, undeveloped property. It would cover anywhere in the city, residential or commercial. That was what I understood from y'all when we left last time. So if y'all want to dial it back, or if you do something different, that is certainly there. I think Mr. Harbison, if you got some changes too, because I know you've drilled into this stuff a lot and know a lot more about it than I do. But anyway, that's just something that I threw out there for discussion, and, excuse me, to try to start the conversation, as they say.
I'll start. On the first, the definition of the grand tree, any tree other than pine, that would pull in like sweet gums and some other less desirable species. So I didn't know if we could get Roy to help on that a little bit, or I want to shorten that list of any tree other than pine. Oaks, live oaks, cedars, nut trees, that kind of stuff.
Would you, and I'm just thinking of consistency. I know in Aiken we had an approved tree list, and then we had a protected tree list, which was much larger than what we allowed you to put in. Would you want that here, or would you prefer to go with protecting those trees that's allowed to be put in for a new development, or
I'd have to
develop
study
a
that.
bigger list?
I'd have
that
to
would-
study that put in list.
Okay. And
I do
also,
agree.
the DBH, number
fine
there.
with the 24 inches.
Okay.
I mean, it could go down to 18 or 20. 24 inches is good too. Better than what we got now.
So that sounds like,
One tile.
so that sounds like 20,
I do
Two
feel like
pieces of paper.
24
That's a big
inches
tree,
is like what
so-
I've
yeah,
seen.
that's,
with
a-
a lot of
well,
the
especially,
tree
and then
definitions, too.
24 inches, and then I think maybe the list of protected trees or
Mhm.
what that is exactly,
that.
because
Because I would sort of rather the language lean towards you can take it down unless it's one of these, as opposed to you can't take down anything unless it's a pine.
How do we keep the designers honest on the tree survey on just a large tract of land? How do we know? I mean, without requiring a tree survey, how can we make sure that we're not missing that?
So let me ask this, would that be a tree survey for all new developments or a tree survey for PD, like developments of a certain size, a minimum,
I think
like,
it would be required for all, any new development would be required to have a tree survey.
And
Which isn't a big deal for a commercial development. It's, an existing commercial development. You just, what's in the
I'm
parking
more
lot.
concerned about like an individual residential development, single family. Subdivision, yeah.
yeah, but we're talking about only for, but now what would you talk about individual lot? I mean, like, so, you know, you buy one small lot for your house, right? So no tree survey there.
I'm just asking the question, how we keep, how we,
That feels hard.
how we keep it right on a.
But we still, I mean, but there are folks.
I know,
Yeah.
with the individual lot, that's a good, I mean, I don't, you're requiring.
'Cause
individual
you have to
homeowner
get-
survey.
A grading, clearing permit. No, yes.
Get a boundary.
for a development or commercial sites you do, for single-family builds you do not. When, they have to get a grading permit when they put a subdivision in.
Right,
But you don't get one when you build on the lot. And if you, I call them legacy lots, that they're existing in town, and somebody decides to build on that lot, they don't have to do a grading permit.
So could we require it sort of when a grading permit is required, then you have to do a tree survey?
Well, I'm just trying to say, like, at what point are eyes on the lot to
Right.
catch, like, if there's something there? That's what I'm just, from our side.
And I know that tree surveys can vary in cost too. I mean, if you have to get somebody to do a full-blown tree survey of every tree on the property, that's one thing. If you say, I just need a tree survey of any tree over 20 inches, then it's a lot more economical. And generally, they're out there already.
Well, I'm not, again, but not,
But
it's,
that's the individual homeowner lot that is not required to bring a land surveyor in and do all of that. What do we?
and most people, including myself, until we talked about this tree, if you told me I have a tree survey, I'd be like, a what? And a grand tree is a what? And what are you trying to tell me? And
Well, and I'm
Well-
thinking probably tied into a grading permit. You can't,
that-
if they trip the requirement for a grading permit, would require a tree survey, and that's just an idea.
I like that one.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
I do too.
Yep.
Because I think that that's what we're targeting anyway with this,
Was the
not the individual homeowner, yeah. You go with that, Rhett?
The rule is
And-
still there that they need to protect it, but they could potentially slip under the requirement.
So when someone applies,
Shame.
let's just go back to the individual homeowner, applies for a building permit, is there a checklist that goes with that when they make application for that?
For a building permit,
Mhm.
we don't see it in our office. Those are reviewed by the engineering department. All right, so, and I'm just trying to drill down and, get my guardrails here. So the tree survey is for trees 24 dBH and higher. Is all that needs to be depicted on the tree survey?
Or whatever we pick as that diameter.
Right,
If
okay.
we end up reducing that, then whatever
In your research, what did you see? Did it start at 18 and go up, or?
Anything from 18
So-
to 30.
Mhm.
Because I read, okay.
The one in Edgefield was 24. Theirs read very similar to this, anything other than a pine. I think we do need to go the other way, where it needs to just be the list of trees you can't. Because you're right, if you tell somebody they can't cut down a sweet gum,
Okay. And
and I think that's appropriate.
mhm. And that's a cut and paste.
All right, so those are the only changes to recommendation 3, is potential list of trees, and then tying it to grading permit for tree survey.
I'll bring,
All right.
all right, now, and I've got this is a question on my path forward. 1 and 2 is pretty, I think, ready to go. I'd like to bring 3 back and get eyes on. Do you want me to advertise for a text amendment next time and bring 1 and 2, or do you want to proceed with all 3?
Let's
as
do
a
all
package?
3 at the same time. Yeah,
Sounds
this-
like a winner.
Let's do all 3.
I would love to have the discussion if someone would like to. And to be honest,
Let me find my papers. Are we ready to move to the next?
We are. Okay, I don't know if you need to use paper.
Yep.
All right, so we're going on to sign regulations. All right.
And this is something that the Board of Zoning Appeals had requested that I bring to y'all to look at. We have had several, and I'm trying to think of the name, it's where Tractor Supply is on Edgefield Highway. That is, we're getting some good redevelopment in that shopping center, but part of the issue is when you look at the total amount of signage there on a shopping center, you're allowed a maximum of 1,000 square feet. Well, when you start adding these up, that's 164.54 square feet. Burlington, I forget what that one was. And then you have all of these on there. You get up, and then you got Tractor Supply, that's 192, Hobby Lobby 177. It gets above 1,000 real quick. And so this is table 9.3 that we go to look at. And in addition to that, there's another section that allows wall sign maximum square feet to be 1,000 or 5% of the ground floor area, or 1 square foot per linear foot of street frontage, whichever is less on a shopping center. Well, usually that 1,000 or less. So what we have looked at is this is the definition of a shopping center. Basically, it's a store with multiple tenant spaces, and they get their deliveries in the back. What we were suggesting as far as starting the conversation maybe is amending 9.6.2 signage allowed by district, and add the underlined in there that says except where a single parcel contains more than one business, each business may have a front wall sign not exceeding 10% of the square footage of tenant front facade. That would be 10% of that. If it's 20 feet by 10 feet, you know, that's 200 square feet, you could have 20-foot sign.
Okay.
If it's 200 by 10, you know, use 10% of whatever that is. My math isn't so good. But that is, and where the 10% comes from is whenever you look at wall signs in here, wall signs areas are 10% in everything other than the downtown mixed use 1 and 2. So that is, and this is less than 10% or about 10%. The Burlington, and I'm sorry, these are from another PowerPoint from the BZA where we used them, and there's the one in the top left is the one you're looking at. But that Burlington, not the big red area, okay, but the Burlington deals, brands, whatever underneath it, that is less than 10%. We would not count that entire red area. It would just be the Burlington area that would be measured for the sign.
Oh, okay.
And then just gives you some ideas of the square footage of some signs that's in that same shopping center and what the, trying to give you an idea, Dr. Crawford, of some scale there. And hopefully I'm hitting the mark here, I'm sorry.
You are. No,
All right.
thank you.
But gives you kind of an idea there. So I know this is the first bite at the apple, and it might be something you want to think about. I'm not saying that what I put out there is the right way to go, but that's the recommendation that we kind of vetted through staff.
My only thought is if we're saying like up to 10%, we have a cap on that. So you can't do a 7,000-foot sign, you know, if it's 10%. But that, you know, 10% up to like the biggest sign will, I don't know what Marshall's was, you know, that's a pretty big sign.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, yeah, at least have a cap on that so it's not something, that's just my only thought, yeah. And is this, in reading the notes with the sign variances, is this the primary thing that we're getting the requests on, the variances?
They've had two
Okay,
for this particular shopping center.
okay,
And they've got another one coming.
okay.
It's not untypical with legacy shopping centers that we have this issue trying to fit in and make the numbers work. I have taken, you know, a grandfathered sign can be replaced. And I've taken the position that if they had a sign up there before and they put the same size back, we're good. But when they change
Right.
the design where I can't do that, that's when we get into it.
And I think the cap part is important because it would also be applicable to new. And so you
Correct.
don't want, I mean, you know, just for lack of an example, if you had a super duper Walmart that was huge, then we may not want, though they have all that square footage, may not want a 400 square foot super duper Walmart plus.
I do think changing it per individual storefront, that makes sense, yeah. Versus total. I just think you gotta have a cap.
But if big box comes back in, I just don't, I mean, I guess it would change it back accordingly, but otherwise, I'm comfortable with it, and I think that 10% is good. I just think, what would you see as being an appropriate cap up to? Well, it's per storefront, right? So it's.
Yeah, you would measure the tenant space.
Yeah, so it's for the tenant space. I'm just saying if you happen to get one large tenant, you don't want.
And if we use like the Marshall's example, if that's, would you say 300 something feet,
Right.
you know, visually, what's the biggest we want to see, you know, lit up at night? You know, what's that? Is 300 sufficient? So can you go back? Did we not have that one?
Yeah, he did.
Okay, yeah. I think you had the size on it, but, and that might just be a little more research on us, like,
That's 164 square feet. Well, and we look at here, you got Tractor Supply, that's 100. But then again, remember, we're looking at the major sign. Some of these boxes may have several
Secondary
signs,
signs. Totally.
and they're all cumulative. If you have a big box Walmart,
Yeah,
You're
you
gonna
don't
have-
have enough. You
Yeah.
gonna it certainly should be no more than a Walmart, which what I would think would be.
And then if it is something like a Walmart, that you may have some extra, if they have to ask for something beyond that, then, because I think that would be the exception too. So, and we're not gonna have a whole lot of space for that. Even the infill, I think we're running out of, infill spots.
So, all right, so then does that mean that the maximum, we're hearing a maximum of 300?
I would wanna go look at some
50?
stuff and probably come back to that personally, but if that's less than 200, I think
Well, but he's saying that with the auxiliaries being added to it, right? So like the Hobby Lobby is 177.5, but you gotta add the other 77 to it. So that's taking you to 249, 250, just on the Hobby Lobby. Right, so that's what I'm saying, so do you wanna say, so 250 would get us kind of where we already are, in essence. 300 maybe gives you a little leeway if you've got somebody else that takes over a huge dead space. I don't know.
Mr. Paradise, what zone is, or like, area is this for? That we're defining it?
these are zoned general commercial.
Okay, general commercial.
But the way, the way it's written, it would apply to any zone, that is, other than residential.
Center. as a
No,
shopping center.
this isn't just for a shopping center, and the reason I wrote it that way is for those, actually, the proposal
He was just
doesn't,
defining. yeah.
doesn't define it as a shopping center, because I think of, storefronts where you have half a dozen stores, but they get their deliveries in the front, so that's not a shopping center. But they've got the same issue, and the one that's coming to mind is where the donut place is up on Knox Avenue, I think it is.
Oh, and.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where
no, 'cause
you've
they don't
got
have
several
that.
tenant spaces there, so that you're not, one tenant doesn't eat up the next door neighbors.
My only thing is if we say 300, if it's a cumulative sign, let's say somebody, like a Burlington size, just says,
Yeah.
I'm gonna put all my 300 on the front, that maybe we restrict it a little bit, and then they can ask if they have to add more to that cumulative number. Just like when we were talking about the lumens and the glow, we don't want it too Vegas-y, so to restrict it, and then you can kind of go out
Well,
from there.
so then 250 would put us back where we were. I mean, so do you want it to 200, or, because that's even, because then that means Hobby Lobby would have had to gotten a waiver for the extra Hobby Lobby sign. Like, so right, and I'm sure Burlington probably is. And that means there's, yeah, and there would be no other sign for Tractor Supply. So Tractor Supply, that would be, so if you think of it as 200 would cap Tractor Supply where it is. If you made it 250, they'd have room for, maybe pull up here kind of thing, signage, right? 300, maybe that's too much, but then, so so you want to do 250, 3, I mean, what's the cap? Because I do think, I'm not a fan of huge signs, but I also realistically think that 200 is getting close to being, for some of these big box. With the 177? Yeah, no, so in and of itself is fine, but it's when you start getting the additional, right, and try to supply, where they pull up, I mean, they have different.
It's so far off the road too, I mean, I get why they wanted.
I do
Well, then
also
I'm
think,
leaning towards 250, and then if they want to go beyond.
or why don't you just not define, the supplementals have to be less than the 10% or whatever. Up to the 10%, you can have the supplementals, but your main signage has to be capped at 250.
Just have a little more, yeah, I like that, because then a little more control over that, yeah.
So they don't put,
Something
but
crazy.
you still got the 10% capping you at 300.
So 10% cap, main sign no greater than 250, and then the remainder could be used on the auxiliary signs. 200, I'm just asking, I mean, whichever.
200, I think. Five Below is what, 187?
The one thing that concerns me is sometimes, especially with big box, like I would even argue that that's the case on the Five Below. Sometimes if your space is, like your front facade is huge and then you're capped at this big of a sign, you look like worse than you would if you were able to make it fit over the front. And so I hate to say such a small number because it adds up very quickly because we're looking at this picture zoomed right up onto the thing, but you got to think you're driving down Edgefield Road looking at that.
Yeah, and some of it's design choices, right? So the Five Below, their entire sign counts, whereas the Burlington, because they're using paint, their actual sign piece is not,
Exactly.
right, but that's also, you know, that's
Yeah,
a
that's in the
branding,
mix.
that's a much larger issue, right,
Mhm,
than,
Yeah, I'm not going to try to solve consumer behavior
yeah.
today.
So-
I would be fine with 200 or 250, but I think 250 is still reasonable.
250, we have all hearts and minds clear for 250?
I'm good with, yeah.
250?
Yes. 250. So the main sign being no larger than 250, and still up to a total of 10% of
Square footage.
square footage is
Mhm.
signage total.
I like that a lot.
Thank you.
We'll try to have something worded for you next time.
All right, sounds good. All right, so all hearts and minds clear, I think. All right, great work, everyone, thank you. And Tommy, with that, staff report, please.
Well, we've created about 35 lots this month and issued a good many addresses, and development keeps moving.
Well, as always, we thank you all for what you do and continue to do. And with that, I will adjourn. All right, thank you.